Alderman Sizmarsky.
Roll call.
Alderman Woods.
Here.
Alderman Roy Wesley.
Here.
Alderman Eugene Wesley. Alderman Sorrentino.
Here.
Alderman Messina.
Here.
Alderman Catalano.
Here.
Alderman Jacob.
Here. I declare quorum. Next, I'm going to make a motion to approve the minutes of the Planning and Zoning and Building Committee regular meeting, August 11, 2016. That is my motion.
Second.
Any corrections? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is a report and recommendation, annexation, and city services connection incentive clarification. Missy, if you get
Thank you. So I just wanted to take a few moments to try and clarify some of the program specifics or the details, because we've met on this topic a number of times, but since the program has been in place and funded, we've received a number of inquiries. And so to be able to more efficiently administer this program and bring to you what you expect, we want to make sure that we get some clarification. So the first one is to clarify the goals of the program. And really, as we see it based on our conversations, there's been two goals. One is to annex unincorporated properties, but then the other is to require connection to city services, which includes both sewer and water. And so really, we're just looking for a confirmation that these are in fact the goals of this program.
what we're talking about is also giving the incentives for the people who are already in the city, but they don't have the sewer and water hookup.
Right, so I'm actually going to go through sort of each item just so that
Okay.
I can get some feedback. And so this is structured very similarly to our TIF workshop, where we'll give a little bit of information and then we'll ask a question and try and get some feedback from council on how to proceed.
Okay, any questions? No questions? So,
Okay, so
yeah, go
we're
ahead.
going to move forward with these as our goals.
Correct.
In terms of annexing residential properties that currently have private well and septic, there was a letter that was distributed to the properties, if you'll remember, in areas A through M, which were the properties that were a little bit easier to annex. And so as part of that, we have offered a waiver of annexation fees, tap-on fees, reimbursement of up to $5,000 for the connection to city water, and then also for the street to patch the city. And so in order to get some clarification, we've actually had the attorney pose this question, where typically the petitioner pays for the costs for the legal costs associated with creating this annexation agreement. And so we just want to confirm that the legal fees are intended to be part of the annexation fees that are being waived.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to approve that.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, the next item is the tap-on fee waiver. As I mentioned, the letter offered a waiver of, and it specifically said water tap-on fees. Since we know that a goal of this program is to connect to both city and sewer and water, we just wanted to verify if the sewer connection fee should also be waived, which is typically for a single-family home, $720.
So I'll make a motion on that. Oh, hold on. Alderman Woods, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I would recommend, or I thought that both of them would be waived. So I think that was the intent, that everybody hooks up to sewer and water, because we have some residents have water, some have sewer. Right?
So all in favor?
Aye.
Oh,
I didn't either, but
I'll make the motion.
second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
As we talk about reimbursement, it was limited to exterior work connecting from the water main to the water meter. And again, this was specifically in the letter, it stated more, it was more about the water. So we wanted to make sure that at this point, we're also including connection to sewer. And so then they would be eligible for reimbursement within that $5,000 limit. They would be able to get reimbursement for connection to city water and city sewer as part of this. But as a reminder, no interior plumbing rework is included in this reimbursement. So I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page with that.
Correct. Sorry.
Okay?
The next item is something that came up with our last annexation. If you'll recall, this property is actually comprised of 2 lots. Now, in order for this property to get water for this existing property, they would have to extend the water main as what's shown here in the yellow. And so I bring that to your attention because this may perhaps change how we structure things, or maybe not, but getting that clarification is important. So if a water main or sewer line does have to be extended in order to connect, does council want to encourage that extension of utilities as part of this program? And then, if so, is the reimbursement amount the same? Because there will be the additional expense of extending that water or sewer line.
Do we know what the expense is going to be?
It really does depend on the length of the property. So I will say that if we go back to, this example here, this property, it has to be extended to the farthest lot line. So if it's only a 50-foot wide lot and it's at the northern part of the property, then it only has to go 50 feet. If it's a larger lot, then it would have to go farther. If it's, for example, this property and there's no water line, then they would have to extend it all the way to their north property line. So again, this is sort of a variable that we hadn't really thought about when this program was initially started.
Good.
I know we kind of had feedback from the residents that the letter went out to. Does this come into play on any of those properties where they were interested in coming back? Do you know?
No, I don't believe so. I believe all of those had a water line that was immediately adjacent to the property.
Go ahead.
And then what's the ones that did not want to come in, what's the worst case scenario? How many feet would we have to, do we have that answer for that?
Well, so for this particular area, there is actually no water main in any of this because this is all unincorporated. So that's that big, large area that's unincorporated. And so this is a question that really goes more into, instead of looking at just areas A through M, this is looking at any area where there's a potential for annexation and how the council wants to proceed with these connections. Because if in fact the city wants to build this into perhaps the CIP program, that's one thing, and then there wouldn't necessarily be the expense. But what is more likely to happen is perhaps that incremental extension may be more likely. And so if there is a difference in how the incentive is administered for those particular cases, that's something that we can work on a case-by-case basis if that is the direction that council wants to pursue.
Mayor?
So this is the area that's over 60 acres. That's what we're talking about.
Correct.
So we're saying put it in the water main. Are you suggesting the city put the water main in and then the residents tap in? Or, because I know we don't want to get into all these recapture fees and that other nonsense that goes on. Is that correct? Is that what we're trying to avoid here?
Right, so this question that we're really posing is, do we want to encourage folks that, such as this property owner here, do we want to encourage them to extend it as would be required for them to connect, so that then perhaps if we want to encourage that, do we want to offer additional incentive to help offset that cost so that the city doesn't have to go in and put in all the water main? The alternate approach would be to build it into the CIP at some point.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but if we're going to give incentives to put in the water main, then why wouldn't we do it ourselves? I don't even know if this is a job that we can do in-house. This is, 100 feet or something? No, right, Matt? This is not something we can handle. Correct? I take it?
Yeah, a service line that we could do, but a line that's like 100 feet, 300 feet long, we'd have to probably have it chlorinated. We'd have to have a company come in, lay it, do the chlorination, do the pressure testing, install the fire hydrants along with it. So depending on the length of the service line or the main line for these things, it becomes more incrementally expensive as we go along.
Go ahead, Kirsten.
I also want to clarify that it's my understanding that we're not actually paying for the entire cost of the connection. The $5,000, I was under the impression that I was supposed to help offset the cost, and that it was anticipated that that would be about half of the cost to make that connection. So if this were to be a consideration, then, you know, perhaps it would be something where it would be half of that. But I think the bigger question is, where do we want to be as a city in terms of encouraging this sort of incremental extension of the service line or the water main?
Follow up?
Sorry, so if you're gonna run this line, let's say, whether that be the resident or the city, next, it has to be sized, correct? Meant otherwise, because if somebody else is gonna tap on, and the next 4 houses are all gonna tap on, and that's, you know, we put in, 4 inches enough for this guy, but then the rest of the area wants to go in, well, 4 inches no good. We should have put in a 12 from the beginning. So who's,
Go ahead.
somebody's watching that, right?
It's my understanding that we have a minimum size, and that Public Works would likely need to, or the engineer would need to approve
Okay.
whatever is being put in. So it wouldn't be just to serve the individual property.
Okay.
Alderman Messina?
So if we were going to extend that service line, would we have to rip up the street further? Would we have to rip up the street further?
Typically, I believe the water line is in the parkway,
Okay.
so it would, I mean, I suppose it would depend on the street. I would imagine you would always want it in the parkway. Sorry, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, technically, we'd want to have it in the parkway, but like with this scenario, depending on what's in the parkway already, if there's sewer, if there happens to be sewer on that side where that yellow line's at, then we had to put it on the other side of the street. So it'd have to be, either be in the street or in the other parkway, and then we're going across the street, and then we're ripping up driveways and other things as
Go
well.
ahead.
So have we put thought if these streets are going to be added to our streets efficiency study? Because I do not want to rip up a street that is in pretty decent shape.
Well, technically, so each annexation that we're talking about, every time you annex, you have to go to the opposite side of the street. So it's really a case-by-case basis as to whether or not that street is already in our inventory or not.
Right.
And so it's, again, it's sort of incremental as we annex these properties.
Okay, so it seems like, and this is what I was getting, it seems like it's going to be a case-by-case basis. To have a blanket is going to be pretty much next to impossible. Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Alderman Woods?
I was going to say, originally, when we had these conversations, the ultimate goal was to get everybody hooked up, so everybody was on the same system. We went after the, as we called it, the low-hanging fruit, the single homes that were encompassed by homes that were already annexed into the community. This one doesn't fit the mold right away, wasn't one of the ones that we were actively after, but I think we do know at some point that these would pop up. And while it will probably take a little more discussion or looking at each one, because if it's the 4th house in, now we got to go 400 feet. That's not something that we're just going to cut a check for, we'll have to talk about. But I think for Kelly's, for sake of conversation here, I think our intent is to get it done and for the city to put the sewer and water line in. That was my understanding when we went through the whole process of what we were doing. That's why we took the smaller ones first, because we looked at the streets where the whole street was there and figured we wouldn't have to invest $1 million on that street, so let's not start there. But we were talking about putting the line in ourselves, so I would say that this would be part of the city. Now, we might have to put them on a waiting list and go, this can't be done till next year, right? It's got to be engineered, there's a whole process to get it done, which is, I think, what Alderman Messina was talking about. But the intent was to do it. Thank you.
So this is up for further discussion?
Well, if I
Go
could. So if we have a property that comes in and an extension of, a water line or a sewer line is required, at this point, if the city is going to install that, then there may be a delay on the part of the petitioner, because the petitioner may want, we could build that in where the city, and perhaps that was the intent, is to build that into the annexation agreement. But typically with the annexation, we want them to connect within a certain amount of time. And if it's a project that hasn't been budgeted, that's, I guess, what I'm looking for, some direction.
Mayor?
Yeah, this one's a special one. So basically, I take it everybody going north is unincorporated.
That's
It's
correct.
60 acres. So at some point, our goal is to incorporate that whole 60 acres. It's not going to happen overnight, and we're going to need to put the water lines in. I can tell you there's residents in those areas that want to come in. I told them it's very simple. Get the 5 neighbors that are to the south of you, and if you all agree, then the city can come in, take over, put in the water mains, the sewers, and the curbs. This guy's right off the line, so I mean, at some point, we're gonna have to do the lines, and it's probably gonna have to go into a budget, like Alderman Wood said. Because you start putting in 400 feet of water main, it's gonna start getting costly. But this is one house, he's right off the line, so.
Alderman Woods?
Yeah, to the one, I think the comment you made was that the person annexing would want to wait till we get the pipe in?
Well, if they didn't want to wait, was there any, because if they're looking to annex, so if, for example, their well, they have an issue with their well and they have no running water and they want to connect, if they were willing to install and extend the main, I guess the question then becomes, is the city willing to increase the reimbursement so that they would be able to do that? Or is it that the city wants to just have the control and install those when it can fit into the budget?
I think it's more the city needs to have the control, because we need to look at the whole street and go, that water line needs to be a 10-inch water line, and do those calculations, as opposed to letting the resident on the 4th house go, my contractor says we could do this with a 6-inch line.
That's what I was saying.
Right, or 4, as the mayor alluded to. So I think in the case of where it's an emergency, we would have to then assess that when those people come, right, and say, hey, I want to annex in, my well's failing, my pump's failing, whatever it is, I'm at the crossroads of either I got to spend money to upgrade those or move forward on this. At that point, we can do a quick assessment via our engineers and look at it and go, this is what it's going to cost us. Do we want to incur that right now, or what's the time frame that we'd be looking at to incur that? So I think we could address it that way, but I think our intent, again, would still be to try to do it ourselves, whether that timing meets with the urgent need of a particular resident at the time. I'm not sure of how that timing would work, but.
So any more questions? So you have direction on that?
Correct.
Thank you.
The next item is related to the street patching. If the city, the letter stipulated that the city would perform this work. I know that in talking with Public Works, there may be some challenges in terms of scheduling. A lot of times, people will try and do this work on the weekend. Public Works is not out to be able to patch the street. There could also be some scheduling delays depending on the workload of Public Works staff. And so the question is, should the petitioner do the patching to allow them more flexibility in when they schedule it, eliminate any potential delays in that, and then reduce the burden on staff?
Alderman Jacob?
Yeah, part of my issue with the resident doing it is, I mean, maybe not meeting the standards of the street. I mean, we need to make sure that the streets all have the same depth, the asphalt and everything being the same. So that would be my one comment on that.
Alderman Woods?
Yeah, so whoever does it, if it's the homeowner's contractor that does it, or if it's the city employees that do it, typically, at least my experience, and in doing this is you fill that hole, and whether you temporarily cover it with asphalt, some communities make me cover it in concrete. That's a temporary for whatever, 30 days, sometimes 60 days to get that settling done. So when you do the permanent patch, you don't have to worry about that settling. So it's not a matter of they're gonna do the work and then we're gonna run out there right away, Public Works, and patch the street. So their contractor can fill that with gravel and do a temporary asphalt patch, which is probably gonna settle over the following 3 months to 6 months. And may need to have a temporary fill put on it, and, you know, at the end of 6 months or 9 months, we could have staff or a contractor. We could get a city guy, if we start doing this, have a contractor that gives us a per job price on doing it also, to come in, excavate whatever, you know, stone to the proper depth, and fill that with whatever, depending on the streets, concrete or asphalt to the proper city level. That's my,
So we're all on the same page on that?
so I would, to clarify, because I would have the city
Right.
right now still keep it. You know, so the goal is to reduce the cost to entice those people to tap on.
Okay, so you have direction on that?
Correct.
Okay.
Then the next item that came up was when we're talking about annexation of unimproved residential property. So whenever land is developed, they have to connect to city services per the code. However, when we're talking about retrofitting an existing house, so, you know, annexing an improved property, it's much more costly to retrofit an existing property that already has everything in place, and then you have to rework plumbing and things like that, than it would be to put in the new construction. And so a couple questions is, should an incentive be offered for unimprovement land looking to annex?
Is that, and, so you're talking about the inside plumbing?
Well, no, the question really is, if you're a vacant lot that's looking to annex and build a home,
Yeah.
should you be allowed to get the incentive? Is it offered for that scenario when they have to, by code, connect? And while one of the goals is to connect to city services, the discussions have been mostly about sort of the retrofitting of existing wells and septics.
Alderman Woods?
I would again look for the consistency, because it starts out with trying to get the people to annex in. So whether there's a house there or not a house there, that people are annexing in and they're tapping on. I get the distinction between one and the other, but at the end of the day, there really isn't too much distinction. We don't want another well, they don't want a well. We want to tap onto the sewer and water, and the more times we can do that, the better it is for the city, better it is for the treatment plant, better it is for our water department. We can spread those infrastructure costs over more people, all the same things that we talked about. So whatever we can do to entice more and more people to do it sooner, I think is the direction generally that we were talking about.
Mayor?
I'll agree, otherwise, they can easily go to the county, get a permit there, build their house, and stay on well and septic. Why no, if it's not annexed into the,
Right, so if it's unimproved property and there's no well, they can't drill a new well. The only way that they could improve.
even at the county level?
Correct. The only way that they could develop the property is by annexing.
Okay. Wesley?
I want to use an example on Wooddale Road. We had a property that was annexed, and then they wanted to run a water line. And then they'd do a tap-on connection fee for other residents. They were just going to run the water line. So what happens with a property that wants to annex into the city in the middle of the block? The incentive is there for the entire block? You understand what I'm saying?
I'm not sure I understand, I apologize.
Okay, on Wooddale Road, we had a property that got annexed in. They wanted to run the water line all the way down to their property, but there was other properties in between that wasn't in the city limits yet. So the connection fee, what, a recapture agreement, that's what I'm thinking of. Are we gonna run into the same thing with the recapture agreement on something like this?
I don't believe so. From what I understand from the direction that we just got is that the city is wanting to install the city services, so the extension of the water main and the sewer lines, and therefore there wouldn't be the recapture if I understand what was stated a few moments ago.
I just wanna be careful that we're not gonna annex something that's in the middle of a block, and then we're gonna have to run a whole water line, and other people aren't gonna be annexed in. Because that could be millions of dollars.
Alderman Woods?
I understand what Alderman Wesley is saying, but that's kind of, you know, what the goal was. And that's where if somebody, take that block that we were looking at, if the 10th house came in to the city and said, hey, I want to annex in, blah, 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 we'd have to look at that and go, because obviously that's probably 500 feet of water main, and determine that that's whatever dollar amount, $750,000, and maybe we can't do that for 9 months or 12 months. We would have to make that agreement and get that time frame. Within that time frame, I'm sure we could be a little more proactive to see if a couple more people at the same time want to add on either side, because once they know that it's there, a lot of people won't ask because they know that there's no pipe. But when the pipe's there, once they see it, it's a little easier to ask, so.
Mayor?
And that goes to what I said earlier, there's a few people in those homes in that 60-acre, and they're right off of Foster, and there are 5 or 6 houses to the north, and they want to annex in. And I told them, well, we can't just run the water all the way down for one, I get the rest of the block, then there's a discussion. I think, right, is that what you were talking about, Alderman? Yeah.
Okay, so we have direction on that one, too.
So it sounds like that an incentive should be offered. So the question is, should it be the same as what's being offered for the already improved properties that currently have well and septic?
Alderman Messina?
You said if they annex in, they have to tap regardless, correct?
Correct. If it's an unimproved or vacant lot
Yep.
that's not been developed, then they have to by code.
Okay.
Whereas these other properties, if they were to annex and they're already improved and have a private well and septic, they don't have to connect per code. And so it's my understanding that's why the incentive was there to try and encourage them to annex and tap on.
Yeah, well, and that's true, but on the other side, we want to move forward and get people building houses in Wooddale again, too. So as an incentive to do that, I would give them the same incentive. I mean, I really don't see the difference of whether the guy was there for 10 years or is building a brand-new house. If he's building a brand-new house, that's even more benefit to us. We got a new house on the tax roll and a new water bill, a new sewer bill to help offset the infrastructure of the sewers and stave off probably potential increases in the water rate.
Mayor?
Alderman Woods just said what I was.
Sorry.
Any other questions?
No.
Oh, one. Alderman Sorrentino?
I'm just concerned if someone, you mentioned doing away with the recapturing fees. Is this part of this program? If someone, if there's an agreement now with the developer, they're not going to blow those recapture fees, are they?
So my comment was relative to creating new recapture agreements for these improvements. If the city does the work, then we don't have to enter into a recapture unless the city wanted to with those individual properties. It doesn't sound like that's the direction, but any standing recapture agreement it's an agreement and it lasts for the term of the agreement.
Alderman Messina?
Would we be able to get reporting on who would be taking advantage of this, of the new tap-on?
All of that comes to you in the form of an annexation agreement, and so we've had 2 thus far. And so each one will come before the council for approval, and the terms of that agreement will be in front of you for a public hearing each time.
Thank you.
Okay, just a couple more. So we also have some unincorporated properties that are already connected to city services. And while they meet one of the goals, we still have the other goal to achieve. And so the question is, should the city pursue annexation of these properties, which I believe is probably the direction, but just to confirm, because this program is sort of, it's a little more than just annexation, so we're trying to sort of package it a little bit, just so that we can be more efficient.
Woods?
Yes. That's all I gotta say.
So all in favor on that one, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
The next question then, if voluntary annexation is not likely, where we reach out to these homeowners or property owners and they are not interested in voluntarily annexing, should involuntary annexation be pursued? Again, they're already on city services, whether it be one or both.
Alderman Woods?
Not at this time.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Alderman Wesley.
The people that are receiving the service, sewer or water, if they're receiving the water, are their wells kept?
There are a couple that we are following up on to ensure that we receive that documentation from them.
Repeat that again?
There are a couple properties that are on city water where we have not received the documentation for the well capping, but we are working with them to get that from them.
How long until you feel that that's gonna be done? I mean, this has been going on for a while.
I'd have to check. I'm not entirely sure.
Do I have an answer on that next week possibly?
So we're all on the same page on that one? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, continue.
And then if involuntary annexation is not on the table at this point, are there other options that the council would like to pursue in terms of encouraging annexation?
Alderman Sisamowski?
I thought we had in the code, in the code that unincorporated properties, either when they incorporate, they have a right to stay on their well until either or the well fails or the well runs dry, then they have to hook up. Now, you're saying that we don't have any documentation and they're receiving the city water, so how are they getting charged?
I'm not sure I fully understand.
You're saying
that
that the people are receiving city water? Unincorporated? This is all gonna be incorporated?
The goal is to ask them to voluntarily annex, yes.
Now, where does that lie that with the rule we have, if you annex in, you have the right to keep your well or don't have a well? I mean, where does that lie?
Well, I'm not sure if all of them have capped wells or if they're connected to city sewer, if they've abandoned their septic field. But all of that, we would have to just check with the health department to verify that they've done that. But if they don't have those any longer and they're already connected, then we don't have to worry about that, because they would already then meet our goals of this program in particular, but.
Alderman Jacob?
For me on this question, I mean, I would not want to pursue the involuntary annexations currently. I would just say the ones that would voluntarily.
Yeah, Mayor?
Alderman Woods was already saying that at this time. We're going through who wants to volunteer, because if everybody wanted to come in, well, we don't have enough money in the budget to do everybody in 1 year. So we're trying to get those that are voluntary first, and then there's a lot of those that probably don't want to annex in because their street's already getting plowed and they're not in a hurry to do anything, but at some point, they will be annexed in. But you want to do those first, because you only have so much money in the budget that you're allowing for this project.
Alderman Woods?
Right. I was gonna say, I mean, if they're on water, we can obviously still offer for sewer. If they're on sewer, you can still offer for water. And in there, we can make a statement that the offer is an unknown time frame. So 2 years from today, this offer might not be here, or 3 years from today, whatever it is, we don't know what it is, to maybe push them over the edge to decide to annex in. I don't want to force them in, but the reality is, just as the mayor just said, at some point in time, I don't know what the time frame is, we'll get everybody annexed in.
Are we offering interest-free loans? No. I mean, that would be an incentive.
This program, as far as I'm aware, is those 4 items that we discussed a moment ago, the reimbursement of up to $5,000, but I'm not aware of any interest-free loans that we've got available.
Okay, any more questions?
I got one more question.
Alderman Wesley.
You know, you mentioned about people on sewer or water, back to that. How is the city charging them if they're underwater? If the water's going down the drain somewhere, if they're not on sewer, it's going in their septic?
It could be going into their septic field, correct?
I think Matt wants to answer it. That's a good question.
Your bills for your sewer are paid from your water bill, so if they're getting water, then that's how we're charging them. We don't have flow rates on their sewer line.
But how are you charging for sewer then?
If they use 5,000 gallons of water, give them 5,000 gallons of sewer.
That's exactly right, but she says either or. Some are on sewer and some are just on water.
Well, if they're sewer, then I believe there's flow rates on those if we're sewer only. We do have flow meters on some that are sewer only, so we can calculate those.
Mayor?
Wait, I believe if they're on water only, they're getting charged for the water, and if they're in a septic field, there is no charge for the sewer. But if they're on sewer only, that's where there's no water, but there's a higher sewer rate, there are fixed costs, and I don't remember, Brad's not here, on what that is, but there is a set fee for sewer-only residents. That's the way we work it.
Okay.
And then, as we're talking about annexation requirements, the city has been requesting easements recently for public utility and drainage purposes, and so the question is, should easements be required for annexations for the potential future public utility and drainage needs?
Yes.
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 So you have direction on that?
Question,
Oh, sorry. Alderman Wesley.
who's gonna maintain these easements?
They're to be maintained by the property owner.
Just like that.
And then we do have instances of private wells and/or septics for incorporated properties, so properties already within our municipal boundaries, where, as we mentioned, connection to city services is not, may not be a code requirement. And so the question is, should this incentive program be used to encourage the connection to city services for those that are already incorporated?
Alderman Woods?
Yes.
Yes.
Question.
Alderman Messina?
Would we be talking about the same amount of money?
Well, that is the next question. Absolutely.
Go ahead. Woods?
Same amount of money.
Different amount?
Alderman Jacob, you had a question?
What about, I mean, would that mean for recapture fees too, or is this?
So in the event that there is an existing recapture for a given property, this program would not negate the requirement to pay the recapture upon connection, if that is in fact the trigger for the recapture. So this is just to offset the costs of the tap-on. So the applicable incentives would be the waiver of sewer and/or water tap-on fees. It would be the reimbursement of up to $5,000 for the connection, and then also the city doing the street patch.
Alderman Messina?
And just to make sure I'm correct, each case would come up to us for review. This would not be a blanket, because I do not want one builder or one person taking advantage of the program And that's where we're seeing the majority of these coming through.
The difference with this particular one is that there's no annexation, there's no annexation
Right.
agreement.
Well, we have
It's-
owners in here that are incorporated, that this would be a gold mine for them to start building, which is fine, which is okay, but that goes back to my reporting. I don't want people abusing the system. Sorry.
Mayor?
I'm not understanding. If there's a home there ready to go, well, the home is there, he's on well and septic. You don't want to give him the incentives, or
Well, if I'm,
are you talking about
I'm,
on an unimproved property?
I'm talking about if I have a property, I'm incorporated, I know as a builder, I'm gonna get more money for my house if I have city water versus not. So my opinion, why should we give them more money? Because we're automatically making more money on that house. If I'm looking to buy a house, that, to me, if that house is not, is on a well, I ain't paying you as much money, so.
Alderman Woods?
I understand what you're saying, but one, there is gonna be a cost to them, so it's not all free to them. The fact that we raised the value of that building, and we will,
Right.
is a good thing for the whole community in general, because it, in general, raises the value in the surrounding community. And it gets that person on our system to help offset infrastructure costs, so our goal is being met. So I know what you're saying, and you don't want somebody to take advantage of it, but I look at it and go, okay, so even if it was a builder and he brought in 5 new houses, I think the city's benefiting way more than we're losing. I mean, it's achieving the objective that we talked about achieving.
Go ahead, Alderman Messina.
And just to be clear, I'm not against it, I'm just saying a little less. As long as I get the reporting, I'm totally for it. I just want line of sight of who is doing it.
How much you looking at?
Okay, so, go ahead.
And just to clarify, so if there is an existing vacant lot that's already incorporated, this would then apply to that property as well. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Alderman Wesley?
Is this incentive the same, Randy Messina's that wanted something lower? Or what's, it's the same? What are we doing? I mean, is it the same, or is it, did Messina want to put up a different number?
Alderman Woods?
So, in general, obviously, to make a rule that covers 100% of everything is hard to do, right? So I think and Randy can respond, or, all these things are gonna come to us. Same in the case of, we all have concerns of the one when the 5th house down the street comes and we gotta put in 250, so we have to have a conversation. But as Kelly pointed out, all these things are gonna come to us. It should be part of the conversation, it will be part of the conversation, and we'll have input. So, but in general, unless somebody wants to make a whole fee schedule for multiple alternatives, and as soon as we find one alternate situation, we're gonna find 2, we're gonna find 3, and then it almost becomes counterproductive to achieving the goal that we set out to achieve. That,
Alderman Messina?
And then I pose the opposite question. Do we incentivize someone that wants to put up, like a builder that wants to put up 5 homes and say, hey, we will give you the full 5, and that one person that wants to build a house, we'll give you 3.
right, so for,
Supporting your point and saying, hey, you want to do 5, cool, we'll give you 5,000 or whatever that number is, we'll give you more.
Alderman Woods?
right, we won't give him more. If he's gonna annex in 5 properties and build 5 houses, we'll give him 5 times whatever the
Times 5.
incentive is.
Right.
So yes, and what, the housing one though, I didn't understand, the guy with,
Go ahead.
Sorry, the one with 1, do we set another figure for that one person, or do we keep it all
I,
consistent?
I personally think that we need to keep it
All
consistent,
consistent,
just
right.
because it's easier to do it that way, and some people probably will benefit economically greater than other people, but that really isn't our goal or objective. Ours is to get the people annexed into the city and get them hooked up to city services, so everybody's treated equally, instead of, we got some guys with sewers that have monitors on them, some people that have water, they only pay water, they don't pay a sewer.
Mayor?
And the other thing is, if you start getting another 100, 200 homes on water, they're also buying water, that's helping set the fees for the water rates. And we all know we still have to raise, I believe, I think it's $2 still. And we've been trying to push that off, so there is some cost here for us, but in the long run, it should benefit the city.
So you have direction on that one?
I do, and that's actually my last set of questions for this one.
Okay. That's it? Okay, so next is the rezoning of property located at 365 East Irvin Park Road. Go ahead.
Thank you. So this property is located on the north side of East Irvin Park Road between Hemlock and Ash. The zoning of the property currently is C2, which is general commercial. The zoning to the north is single-family residential. South of this property is C3, which is auto service. And then just south of that is industrial next to the railroad tracks. The property, as we're looking at it, standing from the rear of the property, and this is actually looking north, there is a fence, a single, or a garage, detached garage, and then there's another property, as you see right here. This is the garage and then the home. As we look at the north, looking north on from Irving Park Road, we see that the adjacent properties are two-story mixed use, as this property is also two-story mixed use. The top floors of these three buildings are all residential, so there's a residential component for all three of these properties as well as immediately behind it. This top image here is a look at the back of the subject property. The request for rezoning is to go from C2 to C3, which is automotive service. When looking at the comprehensive plan for compliance with that, this property highlighted here in blue is actually part of the mixed-use commercial, office, and residential. And one of the items that we've highlighted here for you is that heavy commercial and light industrial uses with a residential component should be strongly discouraged. The uses that will be allowed by right in a C3 zoning district that could be applicable to this property include motor vehicle repair, manufacturing, laboratories, towing service without an on-site compound, and also warehouse and storage. To give you an overview of the property, it does have a building which takes up the majority of the property. As we're looking at the parking is a challenge on the site. The distance between the building itself and then the south property line is 16 feet, which isn't deep enough for a typical parking stall. And then on the opposite side, it's almost 30 feet. When we look at the back, we go from 27 feet down to 11 feet. So again, we've got some severe limitations on the parking for this property. There is one dwelling unit on the top floor, and that requires 2 parking spaces. So 2 parking spaces plus then the parking for an auto service use would be at a minimum 6 parking spaces, but that's also dependent on the number of lifts. So it could be more likely 8 or 10, depending on how the property is going to be used. However, at the public hearing, the CDC recommended denial, stating that it was not compatible with surrounding zoning and land use classifications. It wasn't consistent with the comprehensive plan or with the UDO. There was a couple that spoke in opposition to the requested rezoning. Their concerns were about the incompatible land uses, parking concerns, as well as noise. And then this property had been previously approved for a special use years ago for a auto service repair facility, and they expressed concerns about the constant enforcement of that particular use in that location.
Okay, so let's open up for questions. Alderman Sismarski.
First, I want to address the council that was not an auto repair service. That was a motorcycle repair shop. So there's a difference between an automotive vehicle, high-end automotive vehicle, and a Harley Davidson, or, I don't want to say name, but, or, motocross bike or whatever. And correct me if I'm wrong, but are there not 14 public spaces off of Hemlock within 500 feet of this facility?
Go ahead.
I don't know the exact count.
Well, I can count them right here. You have an aerial view.
Right.
You have the aerial view right there on Hemlock.
Right.
There's, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on one side and 9 on the other, within 500 feet of this facility.
Go ahead.
That is correct. We cannot count them as required parking spaces if they are not immediately adjacent to the property. So
That's not true.
What?
Not true to the UDO.
Go ahead.
So we do allow off-site parking, but it has to be under the same control as the owner or use of the specific property that needs the additional parking. And I will double check this, but I don't believe that on-street parking counts unless it's immediately in front of or adjacent to that particular lot.
Public parking. We put that there for public use, for people to use, not only for that apartment building, the liquor store, this particular building, anybody who, residents want to park their houses, cars there for a party, it's public parking. City put that there, not the resident, not the building.
Alderman Messina.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though, we're putting an auto repair place there. What is public, no offense, but what does public parking have to do with anything? I mean, I don't want cars parked on Hemlock. I want them parked behind. We're dealing with this already on another part of the ward. I don't want cars on public-facing streets that are beat up and getting fixed, because this is the black eye that the city has had for multiple years, and I'll bring up multiple residents who'll tell you Irving Park needs to be cleaned up, and this is smack dab in the middle of Irving Park Road. So unless it's behind the facility, I don't think taking more public spacing or parking up is a smart idea.
Alderman Jacob.
Yeah, just on that, I don't want this to become another Potter Street, and I guess the other question is, if we do allow this and the business doesn't make it there, could another motorcycle repair shop go in there?
Go.
Yes, these uses would be allowed by right. There's no requirement for a special use to review each type of facility before it locates there. So rezoning would allow all of these other uses that motor vehicle repair, manufacturing, the laboratory, those types of uses would be allowed without council approval because they would be allowed by right. So they would just need to come in and get an occupancy from us.
So for instance, if this business goes out of business, they can pretty much lease it or rent it out to anybody under these.
Correct. Any use that's allowed within the C3
So
zoning
this is not a
district.
special use just for that?
That's correct.
There's no expiration?
The request before you is to rezone, and under the C3 zoning district, because it is an automotive service district, then this is allowed by right.
Okay. Alderman,
Yeah, unless I'm missing something for clarity, the parking spaces are for the employees and a
Patron.
customer that's coming, not to park cars that need to be worked on. I understand that warehouse is like 10,000 square feet, and then the office is, or 3,000 square feet, and the office is 1,800 square feet. So there's more than enough room in the building to park cars that are being worked on, whether that's 1 or 5, right? The parking spaces that we're talking about or quoting are for clients and employees.
Messina?
She wanted to answer the
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So technically, the UDO requires that for every lift or work bay, 2 parking spaces have to be provided. And so the issue will become how many work bays are actually going to be provided inside. Now, yes, a car could be stored in a work bay or in a lift overnight, for example, but they still need to provide these additional parking spaces on the property.
Right, and if I can follow up, just to, because I think this will help us, so we don't go back and forth, but, so, I mean, so that's the concern, nobody wants old beat-up cars or cars being worked on, abandoned on the streets, I agree with that 100%. My point was that there are enough spaces for the people that work there and for a client to come and go. The cars would be kept inside. If we want, I'm sure that we could also write into whatever this agreement is, that they can't have any more than 2 bays. The project won't support more than 2 bays, or 1 bay, or whatever that number is. There's got to be some middle ground to allow the guy to get a return on the building and keep everybody else up here happy at the same time.
Go ahead, Ms. Chris.
So the request is a rezoning, and as I mentioned, there's no special use requirements, so this approval would allow that use by right. If the council denied the rezoning, then the petitioner could come back and request a text amendment, for example, to require or to add automotive service in the C2 with a special use, which would then give the council some control over the business operations and the use of that property. But to approve the rezoning would not allow the council to put those additional restrictions unless we did even a text amendment to then change our uses that are allowed in these different zoning districts.
Alderman Sismarski.
Not to go after Alderman Messina, but if you take a look at the aerial view, 389, I count 30 spots there and probably 20 vehicles that have not moved. Right on Ash, the marathon.
Right.
You bring it closer, you'll see all the oil spots from where cars were parked and where cars do get parked, and that's a repair shop with 30 vehicles sitting there. There's probably 15 of them sitting there right now in this picture. You're not gonna tell me they're gonna fix all 15 by tomorrow.
Okay, go ahead, Alderman Messina.
Two bay garage.
Right, so even more to our point, we're just adding to the problem.
You're not.
Discuss that's there now, let's just make it worse and keep adding more and more. I
Okay.
mean,
Mayor?
Alderman Woods already alluded to part of what I want to say. Number one, I'm not sure why we're not going for special use on this
Right, that's-
and changing the zoning. And this way with special use, we're not going to get a repeat of what's going on, where we're trying to clean up on Potter. And if the cars are inside at night, nobody sees them. And depending on the bays, 2 bays, whatever, then the building can somewhat be used. But again, it's got to be some type of hours. I know on Potter, we have issues because these guys are working till 8, 9 o'clock at night, and the residents are right across the street. And if we change this to C3, we're going to have the same issue here. And I think that's what we want to avoid. I think the special use was the way to go. I'm not sure why we're changing the zoning.
Ms. Chrissy, go ahead.
So the request came from the petitioner to rezone because that would then allow the use of the motor vehicle repair. However, there would have to be another step, which would be a text amendment to allow this as a special use. And so the bigger question is, even with that, is it something that a special use should be allowed in the C2 because the C3 zoning district was created for these types of uses? And so it is a possibility and something that the council could consider, and that may be an option for the petitioner if the rezoning is not approved. But ultimately, the request was for the rezoning at this point.
Alderman Wesley?
Is he using this whole building, or just the back part?
Go ahead.
The tenant?
I'm not entirely sure. The property owner is here and could likely answer that question.
If you want to go to the podium and state your name and address, please.
My name is Joe Tulo, and I'm the owner of the building at 365. I've had the building for 10 years, and most of the time the building is sat empty. I bought the building for $500,000, and I had a jewelry store and tried to divide that. What the goal is now, okay, the previous motorcycle person that was in there lasted 3 months and didn't pay his rent, and I had to evict him, okay? So he was not there for any extended time. I personally wanted to give you my assurance that we are looking for valuable tenants. I have a building, an apartment above there. I respect the fact of the neighbors that are behind there. And from my knowledge, to try to rent this on a special use takes 3 months. By that time, if someone wants to rent the building, they are going to look elsewhere. And this building is suited for automotive use. There's many, many automotive uses that could go in there. For example, for the car dealerships on Grand Avenue, I had a couple where they want to detail cars. Wash them, bring them out. I do not want a motorcycle place in that building. I had a bad experience. That is the last thing I would want for that usage. Okay? And I'm looking for now someone who wants to rent, that the only inquiries that I have had has been automotive use only. So I'm basically sitting 2 years with an empty building. This is not a large conglomeration of the REIT investment properties that can leave a building empty and take it as a tax loss. This is a family-owned business. And I ask you what you would do with this building. Okay? I have a mortgage, I have taxes, and large insurance on this property. I have family that lives in the building, and I respect the building. I have done everything the village, the city has asked me to do as far as removals, whatever thing they have done, I've complied to the essence. Okay? I am looking for a solution. Okay? To answer the specific question, to go back to that, is that only 1 or 2 bays would be allowed in there. The person that has expressed interest is a community member, okay, who has 20 years of experience working for a big-time dealership in Schaumburg, and not a fly-by-night person that's going to start a business. This is someone who's started a business with his brother in another state, and they're looking to extend it, and has 20 years of extended professional experience in repairing German automotive cars. So we're not talking about used junks that are going to ruin the property and the village. That's the last thing. I have $500,000 invested in this property. I want to see there's 20-something properties that are empty. Talk about urban blight and bad for the city of Wooddale. I'm offering a solution, okay? If I could pick and choose the tenants, I would gladly pick a bicycle shop or something like that. I've had it on LoopNet, CoStar. I've sent flyers, mailers. It's listed under multiple services everywhere. I've walked the streets personally with my realtor to try to get a tenant. How would you like to have a building that size, almost 10,000 square feet, sitting empty? Think about that. Is this good? I have had vandalism done, gang graffiti sprayed, dumpings, beds, dirt. I was shoveling it today myself, okay? Of all the things that have been dumped back there in the middle of the night. Is this good for the city of Wooddale? I don't think so. And I think all of you should be in agreement with this. This helps solve these problems and bring in. I mentioned to the zoning committee that I gave them an opportunity. Arlington Heights is offering free $50,000 loans. Don't quote me the exact amount, but they're offering incentives to bring in small business to their community. I asked Wooddale, what can we do to help people start businesses in our community so if they want to get their car repaired, they don't have to drive to Schaumburg or Addison or some other community. See what Berwyn's doing in trying to recruit businesses. Listen to the Bear Game and talk about the various communities around in the Chicago suburbs that are actively recruiting businesses to their community. All I've gotten is no. You can't do this, you can't do that. Okay? I'm trying. I'm trying desperately to rent this building. and make this a go, where it be a positive and offer a service, maybe tax revenue, something positive. I would like to, if this person could come in, he'd only have 2 bays. There's plenty of room in that building to store. I've counted, we could store 30 cars inside the building. There is not going to be junks and repairs hanging out and taking up spaces. The only reason we bring up the side spaces that are there is because if it was a retail spot, they could use those. He is not going to be parking cars on side streets or anything like that to junk up the village. There is plenty of spaces that we could still use on the outside, but the inside of the building, and that's a big value to an auto repair business, is to be able to store the building, cars that are expensive cars, inside of the building. And when you look at that, it gives you that opportunity to do that, so they're not vandalized, broken into, or whatever. So these are valuable solutions. If I had a choice, and we had, there was no vacancies, and somebody would jump up and down Irving Park Road and want to rent something, I would love that to happen, and I hope it does happen in the future. The status quo is not working. I'm asking your support, your help, and for a solution to solve these problems. And the other business owners that are sitting there empty, we have that opportunity. So if you have any other questions, I'll be glad to answer them, but I think I've stated my case.
Wesley?
I hear what you're saying. We have developers that spend millions and millions of dollars in the city too, and they have empty buildings because the city has a difficult time working with them at certain times. And I hear what you're saying. But you didn't answer my question. The question was, is your tenant going to rent this whole building out?
Yes, it did. Yes, he is. He would rent the whole facility. The first would just where the customer would come in, and he would try to sell accessories and parts and things like that, and have it as a waiting room, and then the back would be used for 2 bays and repairs.
And I take it you would lose a parking spot for a sign location, or would you use the awning there?
I would work whatever he would like to do. I don't think he needs I don't think he wants to, no one would want any parking places to be removed. The awning sign or a sign up against the building, whatever the code would allow, would be more than enough for him. He has a client base that's already built up, and I think he would be an invaluable tenant and not a fly-by-night. I've had tenants in there that I've rented to that have, one is in jail for writing fraudulent checks, and people have never paid their rent, and it's very difficult to rent here, very difficult. So yes, I would prefer the whole building to be under one tenant. That would be my ultimate goal, to answer your question, and I'm sorry I didn't answer it sooner.
So, my question too is, why did you just go for rezoning and then go for special use?
Because when I'll repeat what I said earlier, if I've done special uses, and they say, I need this tomorrow morning, or I want to start it within a reasonable time, a special use requires 3 months published in the paper, and by that time, they could be gone.
It's the same, isn't it the same time for rezoning too?
Well,
Go ahead.
right, but this is.
I mean, it's the same.
It gives a lot
same
more
period.
options, it gives a lot more options, and it's a time frame when someone's looking to start a business, and not only that, and the other problem would be, is if I could rent to someone, and no matter who it is, and if they don't pay their rent in the first 2 or 3 months, it takes me time to evict the tenant through the courts. And then I would have to start over again, pay a fee, spend the time, and another 3 months would be gone. So in the meantime, I could have 6 months gone in special use permits. That's what makes it very difficult to be able to do that, and that's why I requested the change to C3. Since there is a gas station with 2 or 3 bays, 1 building over, backing up to residential property, and the whole across the street is definitely zoned for automotive.
What,
Follow up, go ahead.
with that gas station's been there since 1965 or earlier.
And this
So
building's
let's-
been here since 65,
But it
correct?
wasn't a gas station, so
Yeah, right.
let's just forget about that part. My point here is, when you had the motorcycle place there, we had problems with the residents there, with noise and everything else. you're going to be using the alley there to get into the location. That's what the alley's for, fine, to help the businesses out. How is the city going to regulate of you repairing a car out there, out in the parking lot, or anything else? If we give you the zoning, we could sit here and say, okay, this business didn't work, tomorrow you're gonna put another motorcycle place or another automotive place, and we have nothing to go on. And then the city's sitting here sending police over there all the time because you're repairing cars
You're
in the driveway
speculating.
or in anything else. So I'd like to know, how would the city regulate that if the zoning was done? I mean, we have residents there, we have other businesses too, and they shouldn't suffer for another business.
Ms. Chrissy?
So this would have to be handled through our code enforcement process, much like it was handled previously. The difference, though, is when you issue or grant a special use for a particular use, then you can actually revoke it if they're not meeting all of the terms of the special use. Whereas with a rezoning, it would just be a code enforcement matter that, if they didn't, and I think that's your point, perhaps.
Can I
Follow
follow
up, go ahead.
To do a code enforcement, how long does it take to do the code enforcement? We still got businesses running landscapings out of houses. Months. So in that meantime of months of doing the code enforcement, each resident suffers and the businesses suffer next door, or whoever else suffer because we got months to wait till we go to court. That's ridiculous.
Ms. Chrissy, the special use, you're saying 3 months. Is there any way that could be speeded up?
That's a pretty typical process because we have to publish notice and we have to do that within a certain amount of time. And then we have a public hearing and then it has to come to committee and then council. So that is a pretty standard. And in fact, that's actually somewhat expedited. But 3 months is a pretty typical timeframe.
Alderman Sorrentino?
Okay. The voice of reason. Maybe it's just me, but it appears that this landlord and this potential tenant are paying for the sins of our previous tenants and previous problems that the city has faced when it comes to parking and other issues. I think the slate should be wiped clean. Everyone should think about this with an open mind. And if the man's going to, I understand a German import, they're not going to want that on the street to begin with because it would be a target for vandalism and or theft. And the tenant's insurance would go through the roof. Now, if he has space for 30 vehicles within the garage with only 2 bays, I can't see another example of the building that everybody's thinking about here, where there's cars blocking the roadways and the side streets and all that. So I think we got to give the tenant and we got to give the landlord a little bit of benefit of the doubt here, because I don't think he wants to repeat. He's heard let me just say it right, be politically correct. He's heard of some of the inappropriate activities with businesses in Wooddale. And, we're here to encourage business for the city. And we do have a facade program that you as the owner can work with Streetscape and pretty up that building if need be.
Which I would definitely want to do in the future.
So, all I would ask is that people keep an open mind, look at the glasses half full, not half empty, and give the guy a shot.
Alderman Messina?
I completely understand, and probably one of the more vocal ones up here on how I feel. I get it, right? We put your facility in there, we've created a triangle of auto body shops, right? So then I ask myself, how could that tenant survive? I get it, they're import, maybe they have a niche, right? But then I ask two questions. One, do you have any clue how long that lease might be? That's the first question.
Well, obviously, I'm sure he would want to take at least a 2 or 3 year lease, I would imagine.
Okay.
We haven't gotten that far because until this question's settled, that's the cart before the horse.
Okay.
I mean, would you prefer, I mean, is there, I mean, a leases to an owner, to a landlord, really don't mean, you know, I shouldn't say this in public, but if they don't pay their rent, you know, it's a piece of paper, it's not a legal agreement.
And that's fair. I think, at least for myself, can't speak for everybody else, it's that consistency. And we create this additional competition, and I
Right.
think that's kind of concerning. The second question I had is, no one's really mentioned it yet, but you have that dock door that's in front. Will that be accessible facing Irving Park, or?
Currently, it's a garage for the tenants, so that the garage is used for the tenants.
Will they be able to enter
That-
and
that's a-
exit from the
that-
front?
That's a possibility.
Okay.
With some work, that could be,
What was the question?
So my question was, there's that existing dock door facing Irving Park, which you know how we all feel about that, kind of what we're working towards, would that be utilized? Go ahead.
I mean, that's a
Virginia.
possibility. It would require, you know, a lot of work to be able to do that. There's a big overhead door in the back, and all they would be doing is pulling it back. But that is a possibility for the future. Right over
So
here.
that one right there, that front one, okay.
Yeah, it's a two-car deep, and there's a space in between there, and I would have to, there is a back stairs for the apartment, but originally that was connected to the front of the building, and to the back of the building. There's been 3 different add-ons since 1963 when the building was built.
Go ahead.
Just one last, so that front spot, or that front, what looks like a one-car garage, two-car deep.
It's two-car deep, yeah.
Could be utilized only, could it be used for any type of repair work?
No,
Okay,
that's with
only
the
for
apartment.
parking in the
Right.
okay.
Currently, that's 2 parking places for the tenant
residents.
in the
Okay.
apartment, and the residents.
Residents, okay,
Yes,
gotcha.
residents only.
Okay.
Alderman Jacob?
Ms. Chrissy, did you say that the special use is 3 months, and this also takes about 3 months to do what we're doing now?
Correct. A rezoning, a text amendment, and a special use are all approximately about the same time frame. They all have the same public notice requirements, and that really sort of sets the schedule.
Because I kind of agree with the mayor. I mean, I really think this should have been a special use. I mean, my fear is, and again, I want to be able to help you out as a business owner, but I don't want a disaster here where we have a tenant in there that we can't control, or this place goes out of business and you're going to get another tenant and that person's out of, I don't want this to be a never-ending problem, which was the case in the past. Again, I do understand your concerns, and, you know. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's been sitting empty for almost 2 years.
The other thing is, and Ms. Christie, the question for you is, you know, just as any automotive repair shop, a lot of them start putting for sale signs on a bunch of cars. So is that front lot out there gonna have 5 cars with for sale signs on it in front of it? Can it be?
So actually,
Illegal.
if I'm not mistaken, I believe that there may be an allowance for auto sales, but I'd have to double check on that. So that would be the only way that it would be allowed, is if there were auto sales allowed in the C3, which I don't recall at this point. Let me see if I-
Alderman Woods?
One, if I remember the C3 correctly, auto sales are not allowed. So these gas stations and all these other places can't have for sale. There was something in there too. So I want to go back to the special use and the text amendment. Is currently automotive an allowed special use in C2?
It is not
It
currently.
is not. So we actually have to get a text amendment to make it legal for us to even ask
Correct.
for that, correct? So it's a 2-step process. It isn't as easy as, so we're saying we could speed that through, but I've been here for 28 years. We don't speed through a lot of things too quickly. So if you're relying on this to put a deal together and somebody's trying to run a business and they have a time frame in mind, you know, 3 months is 4 months or 6 months, there's arguments over the text amendment before we can get the special use even. So I can see that. I also see the concerns of, you know, the what-ifs. And the hard thing with that is, how do you answer all those what-ifs? Because we could carry that out and what-if every project to death, and nothing would ever get done. But I think we have a reasonable owner who seems to have a reasonable tenant or client that's also local, that's willing to rent the building, and that's probably our greatest opportunity to get something that's really gonna work in the community. I mean, we've already turned down warehouse issues or anything else. I don't know how much more you could do trying to rent a building for 2-3 years to get somebody in there.
Ms. Chrissy?
If I could clarify a couple of things with regards to use. Warehouse and storage is actually a special use under the C2. So currently, that is a possibility. However, the question about auto sales, we do under C3 would allow boat sales, motorcycle sales, but not automobile sales. We allow automobile leasing and rental as part of that, but not automobile sales. So there could possibly be motorcycles with for sale signs, just not automobiles.
Planes aren't allowed?
I guess not.
Okay.
No.
Alderman
Just- I mean, since we're theorizing.
Alderman Sismarski?
Yes, did you not come for a special use once before?
Yes,
And what did the council tell you?
it was denied.
City manager, I'd like the video pulled from the date of his car where a certain alderman told his prospective renter to go find somewhere in Mount Prospect to rent, not here. I want that video brought here.
Alderman Messina?
I don't even go.
You weren't here, I'm
I would-
sorry. There's certain aldermen that weren't on the board at that time, though.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I wasn't thinking it was me.
No.
I just go back to what we're trying to accomplish as a city, right? And so we're torn, and that's where we have to come up, right? We have what the committee is saying, and where we want to go, and of course, we want to help businesses. So, in my opinion, I think we're all torn here. We want to help. I don't know what else we can do. I think I was kind of caught off guard because I thought this would be a special use. I would make a motion to see if we could table this till we get more information.
And the video brought forward.
Is it a motion?
Can't motion it.
Is that a motion?
I was asking,
Is that a motion?
yes, I'd like to make a motion to table this.
Second.
And the video brought in.
Was there a second? Mayor, before we, go ahead.
I understand this building's in a tough spot. The two newer buildings on either side of it. It is tough. I understand that we've had problems on Potter Street, which we're trying to address right now, and we want to make sure we don't end up with the same problems right here on Irving Park as well as Potter Street. I've got a lot of legal questions. Unfortunately, the attorney's not here. That's my only, I'd like to get some answers from the attorney before we go forward. And you guys want to table, okay, but when you table it to, for what? Are you tabling it back to what? To this committee in 2 weeks, to next week's council meeting, back to CDC? We still have the same issues. Question, and we have some legal questions. I'm sure everybody has legal questions, so I'm not sure where you guys want to table it to. I just have legal questions, that's all I wanted to say. But to when? Table to when? To next week when the attorney's here?
Sure.
Next week.
That would be the final decision next week anyways.
Mr. Murmas?
You can't table something to next week. Next week is action, so you can ask the questions next week and then decide your course of action. And I will remind you that this does need a supermajority of the council to approve, if I'm not mistaken, because it did fail at CDC.
Correct.
Okay. Any more questions for the Alderman Jacob?
With the zoning, there's no time limits to how early they could open or how late they could stay open, is there?
9 to 5.
Go ahead.
So the operation of the business could be regulated under business licensing, but currently we do not have any hours of operation, the limitations in the business licensing, but for the use itself, we don't have any specific hours.
Go ahead, follow up.
I guess to the owner of the property, would you, if we were willing to do this, would be open to us limiting the hours that are going to be open.
Absolutely, I would write it in the lease. And I would have it visible to any city official that would like to see it.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mr. Murmas?
I'm sure Raul Gracious, he'll write it into the lease, but I'm not a lawyer. I know that really doesn't matter. I would advise us to pass this along to council, and there seem to be a lot of legal questions. You can just ask Attorney Bond next week.
So we rescind the motion to table. Is that correct?
Okay.
Who tabled?
Alderman Messina,
I'll rescind my motion for future conversation next week.
Alderman Wesley, second.
Okay.
Mr. Murmas?
I'll clarify, we'll need to move it along, so we'll have to make a motion and vote to approve it along to council, and then once it's at council, you would need 6 votes for it to pass. But to get it there, to ask all these attorney questions, why pay the attorney to come to a committee meeting when he's going to be here next week anyway?
Okay. Any more questions for Alderman Woods? Right.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion for the city to purchase the building at market value.
Second.
Mr. Murmas?
We have a motion, we have a second.
That's not on the agenda either. I know we can't do that
Can't
either.
That's the same subject matter.
Rezoning and purchasing are different.
So you're going to rescind that?
Currently, I don't have to because it was illegal.
Any more questions for the owner? We have a resident that wants to speak before we do that. Yeah. Any more questions? No. Okay, sir? Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, sir. Yes. State your name and address, please.
My name is Mirko Petrovic, 254 North Ash Avenue, Buda. I don't really know how the system works, but I think the citizens need to be given opportunity to say something regarding this. Now I'm asking the council members, where is the sign for a zoning that was there? And how long the sign should be there? There is a resident here that like to speak, but I understand tonight is not a meeting to answer. Now, gentleman was given opportunity to talk. The resident should be given opportunity to talk. Am I correct, Mr. Mayor? Yes. Is it tonight the day to talk or the next meeting?
Go ahead, Mayor.
Technically, next week is the time to talk. Only the petitioner would answer questions of the council.
Okay.
And next week would be the time for you to speak, but in the past, we've had residents speak at this and give input as well. So, and the alderman is the chairman of the meeting, so he runs the meeting.
You can go on and speak. Go ahead.
Okay. Just not to go too far, okay? I don't know how many you remember. I've been living in the property 28 years. And maybe 4 or 5 years ago, there was a fire across the street. And the fire across the street happened to be automotive repair shop. And all building went to smoke. Now, I don't know how many you remember that, but I was taking picture and making movie out of the fire. I really feel sorry about this gentleman. He bought this property that he cannot market or whatever the issue is, because we have to remember we cannot be mixing residential and industrial. There's people live up there. He is gonna sandwich in. There's a building on the left that have 4 apartments. His building have 1 up there. There's building on the right that have apartment. There's building in the back of him that is residential. I'm next to him. is residential. Automotive repair shop have no business being in the property. His business doesn't, his building doesn't comply with any safety or any parking or anything whatsoever. And I would say I would go along with the gentleman that city maybe should consider buying the property and seeing about some better use about the property. I don't know how many of you drive down Irving Park. Can any one of you tell me, is there any property in Irving Park that the people back up to it? Anybody that pulled to his property, they had to back up to Irving Park. Irving Park is a major thoroughfare and people drive very fast. Another issue that we have there, when it used to be a motorcycle shop, people used to park in the front and they used to stick out on a sidewalk and block all sidewalk. And people were not able to use a sidewalk that is designed for them because the car is sticking all the way out. They almost had to step out on Irving Park to cross, almost. And this happened on and on. There was a longer vehicle, when it's a longer vehicle, they will have to step out on Irving Park to use the sidewalk. I'm asking City Council to really look into this and not to approve for C3. I think C2 is enough for a property. Thank you very much.
Okay. Alderman Jacob.
This is to the city manager.
Go ahead.
The motion that Alderman Woods had made, you said it's not part of this, but next week, could we discuss that with the attorney? Or that's not even up for discussion?
Go ahead.
You can discuss that, sure, but I mean, it's, land acquisition items are usually an executive session item.
Alderman Messina.
Quick question, comment. It just goes back to, I'm sure, their frustration. And there's no knock on staff, but I've been here 14 months, and I just couldn't pick a better building to approach with the facade program. And I just want to pull my hair out and understand, why are we approaching these people? Why are they coming to us? And it's no knock on you, and I know you have a ton on your plate, but hands on, the reason I ran is Irving Park is this. So I beg you, as I stand here, to please proactively come up with a plan. If you need head count, come to us. We'll figure something out. And I'm venting, but I'm ticked. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. Because I think these people wouldn't be here worried about their property value if we would have cleaned up the sins of the past of others. So I'm not blaming you guys, but something needs to be done, and it needs to be done quick and probably prioritized a little higher than some of the other stuff we're working on. I'm done venting. Thank you.
Ms. Chrissy.
We did work with the property owner and talked about the facade improvement grant, which he indicated that at some point he may be interested in, but declined to make any modifications to his building now. And that was his decision. But we did absolutely talk about the various options that the city has.
That came to committee? That didn't come to committee? No, it goes through. No, not this committee. That didn't come to streetscape.
He elected not to pursue that at this point, but absolutely, anytime there is anybody that is interested in doing anything with their property or having challenges, we certainly go through and run through all of the options available through the city. The city has also worked where whenever there is an interest, somebody looking for a space, we have the marketing materials that we then distribute to appropriate tenants.
Go ahead, follow up.
One last, do you have that documented, that you guys had this conversation? If it's documented here, can you bring it next week?
I don't know that I documented that.
Okay,
I'm not.
so there's no documentation that you guys had a conversation around the facade program, but you're saying he did decline, correct?
Correct. And
Okay.
Go ahead.
Can I answer?
Yeah, if you want to go back to the podium, real fast.
Mortgage payment?
to
Put it over.
I would love to utilize the facade program. again, I put yourself, for any of you or anybody in this room to stand up here in my position, having a mortgage payment, taxes, and also a large insurance bill to insure that building of that size. I am not independently wealthy. This is not a major corporation, okay? We're not inland real estate that has multitude of dollars. This is a family-owned property, period. And we thought this building would be a good investment. It has not done that so far. And I'm asking for what type of, you know,
Right.
you know,
Go ahead. If you want to come up to the podium, state your name and address, please. Yes.
Hi, my name is Jean Angelopoulos, and I'm the owner of 355 East Irving Park Road, the liquor store. And we've had a history with the landlord, and I feel like the overall theme here is that he's trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. It's not my issue that a property was purchased that is not rentable, mainly because of the parking situation. We've had issues prior when it was rented with customers of his, and tenants parking in our parking lot. And his problems can't become our problems. We have a parking lot that suits our business. I've tried exiting my parking lot to head east, and when there's cars parked in his lot and also parallel to the Irving Park Road, it causes a major hazard. And we've had one car accident, I don't remember how many years ago, because a car pulled out and couldn't see the car coming westbound on Irving Park Road. It's not safe to pull out backwards onto Irving Park Road. I don't even know how that's allowed. I personally, when that occurs, I have to change my route, and I go behind my building and exit on the other side so that I don't get in a car accident. So I don't know what my customers or his customers would do. So overall, I'm sorry that your investment didn't work out, but it can't become our problem.
Okay, thank you. Okay. And any other questions, Alderman Sismarski?
Yeah. You have the council sitting up here telling people to go rent somewhere else. I have a problem with that. This is a city, this gentleman bought this property here. Has this gentleman ever been a problem before since owning this place? Other than the Harley motorcycle place being here? And who allowed that in here? I mean, obviously, there was no set boundaries for anything, correct? What could be there, what cannot be there?
Mayor?
That was a special use, and basically after that use left, special use was gone. Unlike, this is changed to C3, I believe it's permanently there. Again, there's legal questions, if you guys, instead of keep debating, we could debate this till 12 o'clock. There's a lot of legal questions. Moving forward to next week, the attorney will be here, get those questions answered.
I have a rebuttal. I would also like to have the chief of police find out how many accidents have happened on that property.
That's fine.
Because I've almost been hit coming out of the liquor store too, and the cigarette store next door. So every one of those properties is a potential accident. Because I have a pickup truck, so I back out of that spot, I'm over the sidewalk going into the street, so. I mean,
Okay, so let's have one more question, Alderman Jacob, then we'll, no? Okay, so do we have a motion on the floor to approve?
Need a motion to move
Motion to move
forward.
Go ahead.
Or Mr. Berman?
I would just follow the normal approval process for a committee, motion to approve, and then it would move forward to next week. And
Okay.
then next week, if you don't want to vote for it, just vote no.
Right. Was, one question before we go forward, I guess I could ask this question. Was this ever a C3 at one point? It was always a C2? Go ahead.
It's my understanding that this was a B2, but before that, I believe that it could have been industrial, but that was a long time ago. And so I'd have to double check my records, but I believe it previously was a B2, and that was before we transitioned to the UDO. Once the UDO came into effect, all the B zoning changed to the C zoning, which is,
And was the owner notified when all these changes happened?
all of the rezonings are, and the adoption of the UDO is a public process, and therefore, there would have been public notice as part of that process.
Good. One last question, okay,
Hey,
that's it.
One last request, before last week, or before next week, when this comes up for final vote, can you have that conversation with him about the facade program? Because I think that's could be important to know if he's willing to invest some into the property before next week's vote. Can we get a commitment, as one said?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm not
Go
sure
ahead.
what you're asking for, because
Can
I
you have a
already,
conversation with him between now and next week regarding interest in a facade program?
That's if he's interested.
If he's committed, could you please bring that back before final vote?
Mr. Murmas?
He's kind of answered that himself tonight. I mean, he said that he was interested in a future facade program, and he said to staff that he's not currently financially able to do a current facade.
Can you bring back a written commitment by next week, if possible, please? Thank you.
Go ahead, Alderman.
The final one, you don't need a commitment. He has a letter here to Mo Khan from Joe Tulo stating that the long-range goal would be able to take advantage of the Wooddale Streetscape program and improve the building of this future. It's
I don't
right
want to sit here for
Okay.
I'm just
Okay.
telling you, you're
20 years
asking.
from now, and
Let's,
we're
you're
we're making a
let's-
permanent
Right
change.
there.
Okay, so let's call a vote on this, let's move forward. So there's
We need a motion. You don't have a motion yet.
anyone want to make a motion? Go ahead, Alderman Woods.
Move forward, I'll make a motion to.
Okay,
Second.
okay. So let's have a roll call on that.
Alderman Sismarski?
Yes.
Alderman Woods?
Yes.
Alderman Roy Wesley?
No.
Alderman Sorrentino?
Yes.
Alderman Messina?
Nope.
Alderman Catalano?
No.
Alderman Jacob?
No.
Fails.
So I guess no one's
Okay, next is the city decorative entrance wayfinding sign, Phase 2. Go ahead, Mr. Cage.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. This discussion is based on the existing entrance and wayfinding sign program. Obviously, you've seen the pictures in the packet. We have one wayfinding sign installed just across from City Hall here on Wooddale Road, and we have 2 entrance signs installed. So we're moving through the program. The signs have been received favorably, and so in the memo, what I'm looking for is direction on 3 specific questions. So the first one would be if committee and council decide that they want to continue the program. Obviously, what we did was we budgeted a fixed amount, $50,000, to initiate the sign program. That's what we did. Currently, we're getting close to that number, so the question is to the committee, is that something the committee wants to continue? If so, obviously, we would need to budget a further amount to continue that process. And this would be, assuming the committee's comfortable with it, using the existing sign company that we've used for the existing signs that have been installed.
Okay, so Alderman Woods?
I'm not sure if that really was a question. Yes, we want to move forward.
Right.
In the most expeditious manner we can. I'd like to speed up the process.
Yes.
I think it-
Yes.
And increase the amount of money that we spend per year, so, it doesn't take me until I'm retired to see the rest of the signs go up.
Good.
We do have some of the board members from Royal Oaks, and, okay, are you ready to talk about that?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
That's
Go
That's
ahead.
the next question we're going to talk about.
One thing that I'd also like to add is, to kind of second what Alderman Woods mentioned, to get this moving forward, as well as to possibly change and put the leaf on. Are you going to bring that up for this? Okay.
Go ahead.
So, hearing that we want to move forward expeditiously on the first one, and that dovetails well into the second question, and I do have some pictures that I'll just briefly, if I can distribute them. So this is, the picture you have in front of you is an example of some existing decorative street signs. There is, as Alderman Jacob mentioned, there is a homeowners association that's interested in purchasing. Really, this sign is an example, just to kind of give you a flavor of something that another community does, and I know and Alderman Jacob can probably speak in greater detail than I can. I know the association is interested in installing some decorative street signs, and that relates to our second question, which is, does the council want to allow other entities such as homeowners associations the ability to purchase and install, so purchase the signs at their own expense? And I believe that would be a city design sign, so something consistent with our decorative signs. So really, that's the question. Is that something that the council wants to entertain?
Okay, I'm a little confused here. We have, in the city of Wooddale, we have different park districts where our residents go. We have different school districts where our residents go. Now we're going to have different signs. I mean, this is branded. We want the whole city to be the same. I mean, as far as, go ahead.
No, the intent is, and the picture is just a depiction of an example. So the bigger question is, we have a palette of decorative signs and wayfinding signs. And I know that, the council has looked at this and discussed it quite some times. And I know there's specific colors. Obviously, we have the design with the leaf. So is this something that the council would be interested in doing if we decided on a specific style that would be consistent with our decorative signs? Would we allow them to purchase and install signs if it's consistent with a sign palette that we have approved?
Alderman Jacob.
So I think, to answer your question, Alderman Catalano, I think he's asking if this homeowner association wanted to purchase the signs, can they, as long as they meet our requirements? They're not saying, we could just let everybody come here and design their own signs, but
No, I
if
understand.
they want to pay for the signs,
Right.
I don't see why, if
But-
they want to do
But those
that.
signs are going to be different than our street signs.
No.
They're gonna be the same.
The question he's saying is consistent with the city design
The
signs.
same.
And we have, if we could, we have one of the board members that maybe speak.
Okay. First of all, let's go with the mayor first. Go ahead.
Basically, what I understand is, so whether it's the sign with our emblem, city emblem on, or whatever the city chooses to go forward with, that would be the sign that the homeowners would be able to use. And if they wanted to pay for it, as long as they're using what we're looking to put everywhere else, that seems pretty simple.
Alderman Wood.
Yes. So we get an answer.
Okay, you can go up. Yeah, you can go up and speak, please.
That's pretty easy.
Go ahead.
My name is Kathy Raymond, and I live in Royal Oak subdivision. To clarify a little bit about what we were talking about, we had our homeowners association board meeting a couple months ago. And some of the board members brought, I don't know what pictures you are all looking at, but they brought pictures. Yeah, and they had seen these, and they thought, wouldn't that look nice in our subdivision? We've done a lot of upgrading with landscaping and all of that. We got our new streets, everything looks wonderful. So they thought this would look really pretty, and I said, so we thought that we would ask our aldermen if we were allowed to do that. And I figured we wouldn't be able to, that it's got to be uniform throughout the village, and we understood all of that. But we thought if we were allowed to do it, we could look into the price of it and see how much it would cost. We don't even know if it would be in our budget. We have no idea what these signs would cost. But then we figured we wouldn't be able to because we know that it would have to match everything else in the village. We were hoping that and then we were told by our alderman that the village was indeed looking into getting new street signs anyway, so we were kind of jumping the gun on the whole thing. What we would like to see is something like that, certainly not that fancy, that would be, I'm sure, way too expensive for the whole village, but something with the oak leaf on it, or WD initials, or something. I mean, Elk Grove has the elk on theirs, all different villages have different little logos on them that I think would look nice. So then the second question would be, if the village did approve new signs, and we got those over the next couple of years, would we, if the village didn't replace the poles that the signs are on, and we chose to do that part of it, would we be allowed to do that in our subdivision? So those are a couple of things that we had come up with at our board meeting.
Any question? Alderman Sosmowski.
If I'm not mistaken, your subdivision already has posts with the street signs on it, correct?
I'm talking about.
Engraved?
Yes, they are on metal posts.
Any other questions? Mayor?
It really comes down to what sign have we picked for the entire city? And
Right.
They
Absolutely.
seem to be very agreeable to whatever we
Absolutely.
pick, so it seems like a kind of a no-brainer. We need to pick a sign first. I don't think, I know we looked at the emblem one, we've tried a couple, but the lettering was small, so I don't think we ever finalized our street signs, correct?
Alderman Jacob.
Wait, Tony.
Oh, Jeff Members, go ahead.
Yeah, if you look in your packet in the design specs, the last sheet, the picture, it has a street sign, the Irving Park Road one. That technically was the approved street sign, although we've gotten really positive feedback with the signs we have up now. Everybody really likes them, especially that leaf graphic. So an option could be to potentially add that leaf graphic. But right now, technically, we did approve signs, and the approved signs have no graphic. That's why we're coming to you to see if we want to change that before we order the signs, or let a subdivision order the signs.
Go, Messina.
And if you could just clarify, Kathy, for the folks up here, when it comes to the posts, so we know the signs, you guys are very agreeable, but would you guys want to do a different post than what we might roll out to the city?
Again, we haven't, this just came up a
Preliminary,
couple of
right.
months ago. This just came up a couple of months ago, so I don't know. But we thought if it was within our budget, could we afford a post sort of like what's on that picture?
Go ahead.
And ultimately, just, I guess you could answer, it would go up to committee, right? Their design, once we get to that point.
Go ahead.
Well, their design on the sign would be our design. Their design on the
Streetscape. I mean, if they wanted to do something with the post.
Well, the post would be, you would have to allow that. Everything's going to be uniform unless you guys say it's not.
Okay.
Alderman Woods.
I was just saying that the answer's still yes. That we'll move forward. But I think, and Kelly can correct me, the streetscape was going to get together and go over, plan to decorate the entryway signs, and come up with a plan for those, and then we could reassess this leaf and try to get a couple alternate views of that leaf, because that seems like what everybody wants. And then fine tune some of the things to roll out those signs and wayfinding signs and entry signs, especially a little faster, and get a count on all those things to better create a budget to get those done sooner.
Mayor?
Okay, so we're talking about the leaf on the street signs or on the entryway signs? Because I know we,
Street signs. Most of the entryway signs and wayfinding signs already have.
well, that's why but there's one here that has it on the base, and I know I had brought up on the base if we can put in established or founded, something on the bottom, and then you guys, I know, working on the landscaping, because like the one at the Dunkin' Donuts, we put the high grasses, so even if we put something on that base, you don't see it anymore. And I
The
thought,
grass is almost overtaking the sign.
well, that's what I'm saying, so, you know, we're paying a lot of money for those signs to stand out, and if we're gonna cover them with tall grasses, they don't have to be so fancy on the bottom, but that's not our intent. It's okay, so you're talking about the street signs.
Alderman Jacob?
One question I had, and maybe this is for Alderman Woods for the Streetscape Committee. Was the intention originally with the street signs to change the post too, or was it just strictly to do the signs?
To change the post.
To change the post and the sign, correct? Okay.
Any more questions? Alderman Sorrentino?
Yes, to Mayor Alderman Woods, but I think the association needs to be complimented for taking a proactive stance and beautifying the city of Woodville. So I think all of us here would agree. Congrats and kudos to you and the board for doing what you're doing. That's all.
Okay. If there's no more questions, you can step down. Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
So briefly, just to clarify that this is something that, you know, we're interested in adding the leaf to the street signs. Obviously, what I'm hearing is perhaps a couple of options, a couple of choices. We had a design put together by the prior group. The installation of it, and I just bring this up just for briefly for informational, it's the sign that's in the packet is attached to the pole in a very similar manner to the one across the street here. Obviously, if we do that on an individual basis, it's going to cost more. So I think there's a couple of different options, the way that we can attach it to the pole, and I know that the association has probably some similar concerns, so I think that's something we can look into and bring something back.
Go ahead, Mr. Newman.
I just want to clarify, so we're all on the same page. Streetscape's going to work on some minor tweaks to the current signs,
The street sign, street name signs.
as well as the main gateway sign, though, potentially at the base.
Correct.
But we can order the ones that are outside City Hall to proceed on, because there is no modifications on those.
Or
Okay.
the gateway sign is the same thing.
Okay.
Okay, so you have direction to move forward. Go ahead.
If I could just, so I know that at Streetscape, we are having some discussions about modifying the base, and there are some base modifications that may be cheaper to do when it's fabricated. So I guess that is the question is, are we moving ahead with additional gateway signs?
We're moving ahead with additional gateway signs, as designed. Correct.
Okay. Alderman Jacob?
And Alderman Woods mentioned it too, was, you know, I think we definitely need to move the time frame up and come up with some, you know, put it into the budget, find out exactly what the cost is, because right now we don't know what the cost would be. Get it in the budget, get it done in the next, 3-4 years, and not make this a 20-year project.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think now that we've all seen the signs, we know we like the signs, I think we can get a little bit more aggressive with the capital planning, and get this done quicker.
Okay. Alderman Messina?
In the packet, you had that question. In the packet, you had that question regarding number one, budgeting an additional $50,000. Is that something we can wait until we know exactly where we fall with costs, now that you guys have direction?
So to clarify, with the existing signs that have been installed, so we've got the two entrance signs, one on Elizabeth, one on Irving, and we've got the one wayfinding sign. we spent approximately $42,000. That's the signs, the new pole that the wayfinding sign is on, which was a fair expense, and then the connection to the sign on Elizabeth Court to illuminate it. So $50,000 obviously gets you a number of signs. What I've heard is that the group wants to expedite it if this is something we put in the budget. I can guarantee the sign company would be happy to manufacture and install as many signs as we see fit. So it's really, to expedite the plan, it's really based around the budget amount. The signs that are installed are a fixed amount, so I know how many I can get for a certain amount. It's really a question of how much we budget and how many we want to do. Right. Thank you.
Mayor?
You just mentioned something, Ed, with, you know how much they are. So I'm looking at your major gateway, minor gateway upright, minor gateway horizontal. I mean, these are just the page numbers, right? How many signs total are we talking about?
So the major gateway is the two signs that we've installed, Irving Park and Elizabeth. Actually, there is a smaller version. It's a narrower version, which we'll have to use on some properties. As a rule, they're a pretty similar price. There's not that much difference, but the wayfinding signs are significantly less. The only challenge with the wayfinding signs, the price gets pushed up because to mount them at the height on the pole, you need a reinforced pole. So the signs end up costing a fairly similar amount by the time you do all the work involved in them.
Mayor?
And what I was getting at is, knowing how many signs we want to put out, just an approximate cost as compared to what we just spent, so we know exactly what we need to budget. Because, right, we don't want to turn this into a 15-year Wooddale Road light project that finally got finished.
I can absolutely.
Oh, you have that number?
Well,
not now.
I'm not going to give you the number right now because I'm
Right.
not going to calculate it in my head and risk making a mistake. But that's a number I can get you, and what I need to do is just verify the number of additional signs to complete the plan, calculate it, and then the wayfinding signs, I'll come up with a number.
Again, it's an approximate, just so we can move this project forward.
Alderman Sorrentino?
Just to digress a little bit, the heart's very warm and very open this evening. When we talked about those signs, when they were originally installed, they resembled a freshly covered grave. And I would like to, more kudos to Linda Lucania from Holy Ghost Church, who volunteered the cost of the flowers and the labor and install those just to give them a temporary aha sort of moment. There were never the intent to keep them there because Streetscape is discussing items to go along the base. So what turned out really well, someone added a little miracle grow to the ground and up came the grass. So thank you, Linda, and Holy Ghost.
Thank you, Linda.
Alderman Jacob?
As far as in that cost, are we having, when we have these signs installed, just say on the street signs, would the city, our staff be installing those, or would that be the sign company? Who would be doing that?
Go ahead.
The street signs, we do, but those big monument signs, they were doing.
Go ahead.
That was my question. The street signs, the city staff would do, but the monument signs we have, okay. Thanks.
Okay, any more questions? So you have direction on that to move forward?
Thank you.
Okay. Next is community development, purchasing a vehicle. Mr. Cage, you want to give us a quick overview on this?
Yes, briefly, I know we discussed this at a prior meeting. The direction was for staff to bring back further information. Essentially, we have three options that are within budget for a replacement vehicle. Obviously, the option, I'll go in reverse order. Option 3 is just a regular vehicle. Obviously, the cost $24,894. I think that the key part to this, or the analysis, is estimated MPG. Obviously, a typical Ford Fusion, 21 miles per gallon per city, 32 per highway. And we know the vehicle, we have one that's existing. Kind of the option two, once again, going in reverse order, would be the Ford Fusion Hybrid. Obviously, a bit more of a cost to it because it is a hybrid. Estimated cost, $28,643. Approximately double. The majority of our miles are city, so the regular gas is 21, the hybrid is 43. Now, the hybrid is also on the state contract, so obviously we get a better price on that, as is the regular gas vehicle. Typically, a battery, for a hybrid vehicle has a warranty for approximately 8 years or so, but the replacement of the battery is approximately $4,314, plus or minus. So, in looking at other communities, typically the community, I know one of the elected officials directed staff to talk to. I talked to the city manager. They started off with it's a larger community. They have more vehicles that they use because they have a larger staff. They have the regular gas vehicles. Then they went to the hybrid vehicles, which they have a number of. And then more recently, they have 2 electric vehicles. So the third option, which is option 1 here, would be the electric vehicle. I would note this one costs significantly more because it's not on the state contract. It's a different vehicle. It's a Ford Focus, which would be the same vehicle that the other community has. The other community has had no problems with them. The estimated cost for the 2017 Ford Focus electric is $33,531. Estimated MPG, obviously, with using electric charge, they have to put a number on it. 110 city, 99 highway. Estimated battery life, warranty is 8 years, but the replacement for an electric vehicle is obviously a lot more expensive, $10,508.38. And I think the other key element we need to be aware of with this one is it would involve the cost of a charging station. To do a dual vehicle charging station like they have at Navy Pier is approximately $4,200. So those are the 3 options, and then if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, for the residents out there, if you want to leave, you're welcome to. So I'd like to make a motion for option 2, the Ford Fusion Hybrid. That's my motion.
Is that American made?
Yes, it is. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Or let's have a roll call on that.
Why don't you call Roy back in then?
Where is he?
Doing what he does
Roy
best.
wanders.
He's running for re-election.
Mr. Wesley? The hybrid Ford,
Okay.
okay?
No question?
Alderman Sizmarsky,
No.
Alderman Woods,
Yes.
Alderman Roy Wesley,
Yes.
Alderman Sorrentino,
Yes.
Alderman Messina,
Yes.
Alderman Catalano,
Yes.
Alderman Jacob.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Okay, next is the items considered for future meetings, comprehensive plan, RFP, October 13th, Chapter 4 Code Revision, October 13th, and Commercial Occupancy Program Business License Fee Structure on October 13th. And last is the Fawndale rezoning coming up in fall. Any other items to consider? Alderman Woods?
Yeah, I don't know if this is where it goes, but I would like to put on the agenda purchasing 365 East Irving Park Road.
Okay. Any other items to be considered? We need a motion to adjourn.
Sec.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We adjourn.
I'd like to call Public Works Committee to order. Let the minute taker show that the same, well, minus Roy Wesley's out. I'm getting a request for a 5-minute break, so if everybody agrees, we'll 5-minute.
You should move.
Alderman Sorrentino needs a break.
I love the breaks.